Hi, my name's Dakota. I'm a Rangemaster certified instructor and I run the San Diego chapter of A Girl and a Gun. I have spent a lot of hours on the range and I've learned some things along the way. So in this video, we're going to talk about some essentials that you might want to keep in your range bag too. I'm a big fan of using electronic ear protection on the range. There's a few reasons for this, but mostly because when I'm on the range, I want to be able to hear what's going on around me. If I'm teaching a lesson, I want my student to be able to hear what I'm telling them, but I also just like being aware of what other people are talking about on the range or anything that they might be struggling with. So I don't love using passive ear protection that doesn't have batteries or the ability to amplify quiet sounds when I'm on an indoor range especially. But some of you may prefer that, and that is completely fine. Personally, I prefer using the highest level of noise reduction rating that I can for indoor shooting. And that would be something like the Impact Pros by Howard Light. These have a noise reduction rating of 30. That is pretty high for this type of ear protection, and I prefer my indoor shooting ear protection to be a higher NRR. For outdoor range shooting, I'm more comfortable with using something that has less of a noise reduction because the air and being outside just really kind of helps dampen the noise anyhow. So that would be something like Howard Light Impact Sports or Walker Razors or Savior Apollos. There are a ton of great options out there, and I don't really have a big personal preference. Just make sure that before you purchase your ear protection, you know what the noise reduction rating is, and you make sure it's appropriate for the type of use you're going to be using those ear protection for. When we're at the indoor range, we can't control what guns other people bring and shoot near us. So you might have somebody next to you that is shooting a super loud gun. You are always welcome to double up your ear pro. You could bring some foamy ear protection, insert those first, and then put your over-the-head ear protection on over top of those foamies to really help reduce the noise that you're hearing. If we're going to use over-the-head hearing protection, oftentimes we really want to be mindful about what kind of eye protection we use. If we're using eye protection that has a thicker band that goes behind our ear, the over-the-head hearing protection will press that into the side of our skull, and it could give us a headache over time. I know that has happened to me plenty of times. When I'm using eye protection on the range, I prefer the band being very, very thin so that when the hearing protection is pushing it into my head, it's not causing a hot spot or giving me a headache. I also like keeping a small cloth to clean the lenses because we all know how annoying it can be when your glasses fog up and you can't see what you're doing. I like wearing a ball cap when I shoot because I think it helps protect my eyes from hot brass kind of entering the top of my eye protection and possibly getting stuck on the side of my face or even making contact with my eyes. And it's also good for sun protection and all sorts of other things. So I'm a huge fan of wearing a ball cap every time I shoot. Another item that I think is mandatory for the range is some sort of a trauma medical kit. This is going to include a tourniquet and some other goodies that would be really helpful if anybody had some sort of a massive bleeding event. There are a ton of free resources I would highly encourage you to use, like Stop the Bleed online. The Stop the Bleed classes near you might be very affordable, and that's a great hands-on way to learn how to use a tourniquet, but Stop the Bleed online has great resources as well. Highly, highly recommend having some sort of bleeding control devices with you anytime you're on the range, not just for your own personal safety, but for the safety of people around you. Next thing I like to take to the range is a well-marked muzzle pouch that has a muzzle indicator. This allows me to always put my gun away in the same direction so that when I'm taking my gun out of the bag, I already know which way the muzzle is pointing. There's no need to look inside and then rotate my muzzle pouch because I already know which direction my gun is facing. I also like to tag my bags with the make and model of the gun so that I don't have to open it to see what kind of gun it is. I just have it marked very easily on the bag. Aside from our gun, we also want to have plenty of magazines for whatever drills we're going to be working on, and ammunition. Make sure that you come to the range with a plan and bring enough ammunition for you to work on the skills that you're going to focus on that day. When your mags are new, the springs are super tight, and an up lula can go a long way way to help you load those magazines and have an easier, more fun experience at the range. For range events that I'm teaching at, I have every student fill out an emergency contact card that they wear in a name tag on the back of their hat. That ensures that if anything ever happened on the range, we would have instant access to their emergency contact information. I think it's a really important thing because if you're at a range where you don't know anybody, the odds of them being able to call the people that love you is pretty low. So we want to have some sort of emergency contact information on us. When you're going to the range, you want to be prepared to do the specific type of training that you're going there for. So if I'm going to the range to do outside the waistband holster work, I'm going to use a pair of pants that have good belt loops that allow me to wear a sturdy belt and can hold up the weight of the gun appropriately. I would also have some sort of outside the waistband magazine caddy for practice with reloads. If I'm going to use something like the Enigma, since it's not married to my pants, I can wear whatever I'd like. I also want to be mindful about what kind of clothes I'm wearing to the range in general. So I'm always going to wear closed-toed shoes, and I'm always going to choose a shirt that has a higher neck on it so that if there's hot brass that's coming back and hitting me from either my neighbor or from the bay wall, I'm not getting that down my shirt and causing discomfort. Some other things that are just nice to have with you at the range, I really like having a small toolkit that has Allen keys and screwdrivers and things that I can use for just about any holster or gun problem that I could have on the range. I have a little mini tool that I use for a lot of things as well, including adjusting my optic if needed. I also like to keep a squib rod with me just in case there's a squib while I'm on the range. I keep a notebook and a Sharpie or a pen in order to keep track of the drills that I'm doing. I write down the date, my scores, and what kind of holster I was using for that drill. Some training tools that are nice to have with us on the range are a timer and snap caps. I enjoy using snap caps for malfunction practice and also to see what I'm doing to the gun when I press the trigger. If I put a snap cap in the magazine, I will see if there's any movement in the gun during the trigger press. The timer can help me just keep track of how fast I can do certain things like reloads or drawing to first shot. It's also helpful to have some cleaning supplies. I, at the very least, like to have some sort of lubricant in case my gun is dry and malfunctioning. Another thing I like to bring with is chalk. I get very sweaty hands, especially when it's hot out, and I love using chalk to just kind of keep the grip between my hands and the gun a little bit more secure. I also bring hair ties, Sharpies to mark my target, and a flashlight in case I drop a snap cap all the way underneath the bag. Having batteries with you for the tools that you use, including your ear protection if they're electronic, your timer, and your optics, can go a long way to making sure you have a fun time on the range. There's nothing worse than getting to the range and realizing your whole plan is ruined because you don't have a battery for your tools. When we're leaving the range, we want to clean our hands very well with something like a de-lead wipe, and we also want to think about all the ways that lead could be attached to us. It probably landed in your hair, on your clothes, and you definitely tracked it into the soles of your shoes. I personally like using Ziploc bags to store my range shoes. I can take my shoe off when I leave the range, put it in my Ziploc bag, and throw it into my range bag. That way I'm never walking into my home with my lead-covered soles. After hundreds of hours on the range, these are the things that I have found are very helpful for me. But what about you? Please comment down below what essentials you bring in your range bag. If you're looking for more resources on safety, concealed carry, and best practices, go to the Learn tab at PHLsterholsters.com.